Representative My-Linh Thai, it is so nice to meet you. I had the chance to listen to you speak at the Vets for Biden campaign, and I knew I wanted to get in touch with you to learn more about you. So for our viewers and listeners who don't know much about you, I'll let you introduce yourself. So what is it that you do, your role in Washington, and what does an average day look like for you?
Oh my goodness. That's a loaded question. My background, I graduated from University of Washington in School of Pharmacy, so we share the profession. I got elected to serve as state representative in Washington state legislature in November 2018. So my first session was the 2019 session. The normal sessions and interim, which is, well, I think Oregon and Washington share similarity in the sense that we are part-time state legislature.
Mm-hmm.
For Washington State, in odd years, we have what we call a long session, which is 105 days, and in even years, we have short session, which roughly about 90 days. And we worked on various issues that impact people in the state. I have the privilege to be the first Vietnamese refugee elected and served in Washington State Legislature. I am one of two pharmacists who serve in Washington State Legislature. And my day during this interim, during the pandemic, a lot, just like many of you, a lot of it is on Zoom call, Teams, Microsoft Teams, WebEx. I mean, it's like all those platforms. And it's divided into, I think, two and a half main functions. The first one is I'm still working on legislations, meaning because we're in the pandemic and since the legislature is not in session, we switch our role from active legislators to advocate. And so we're advocating for issues with the executive branch, which is the governor's office. We're pushing for how funds are being allocated and spread so that is equitable. And then part of that work is also meeting with constituents to understand people's needs as far as preparation for the 2021 legislation. And the other piece is to look at some of the past legislations that didn't go through and re-engage with both legislators and constituents. Similar but different because they are not necessarily new legislations, and so I'm calling it the half piece. Outside of my work as legislators, as a citizen, I am campaigning for my own re-election. I'm also campaigning to elect Biden-Harris ticket as our new administrations in our countries for the benefit of hopefully not only my children but future generations. When we look at climate issues, when we look at racial issues, and we look at many of the issues that impact our practice, which is in pharmacy, and that is healthcare issues.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a lot of jobs in one. So I love that. Thank you for letting us know briefly about that. I love that you are a pharmacist, and that's why I'm so drawn into you. And you're so involved with the education system in Washington. Because as a pharmacist and an educator myself, and especially growing up in a Vietnamese household, I know how important education is for Asian families, and more oftentimes than not, there's this notion that education is the only shot you have to get out of poverty. So I'm curious to know, talk to me about your transition as a teenager in Vietnam to navigating through our education system and eventually graduating from UW. And by the way, I have to add that I graduated from Washington State University College of
Not
Pharmacy,
that,
but,
yes.
but we can work out those differences later. So,
Well, you know, we very much the same cougar, husky, right? um, so I came to this country when I was 15 and I was fluent in French,
Mhm.
not so much English. And, I- and at the time, I think the school district that I ended up in, they put all the, um, they put it this way, they put all the kids that needed extra resource in one school for the sake of efficiency, I think. And because of that, my school was the school of uh, students who do not speak English as a first language, students with special needs, students who need alternative, um, quote unquote, alternative educations. So it was an interesting school. I didn't know any better, and so my initial reactions to the education system in the U.S. was I didn't know what all the fuss is about. Like these kids was so bad. Um, I think I came to be a sophomore in high school, and with limited English, I was able to finish the entire requirement to graduate high school within that 3 years period.
Mhm.
So I think I have to really there's two factors to how I got to where I got. Number one, my stubbornness, where
You have to be a little stubborn, right?
yes. When my counselor was asking me what you wanted to do after high school, my second year in high school in the U.S., I said I wanted to become a doctor. In fact, I wanted to be a geriatric doctor at the time because I was raised by my grandparents. And as a little kid, I wanted to be a doctor to take care of all the grandparents so no kids will ever lose them. Um, it's a silly little kid's dreams. And I was told to change that dream because it would not be possible for people like me. Um, and I told her that she need to write it down, the list of what I needed to do so that I can get to that dream. To say no, change to a different path was not acceptable. I think the only one who has the power to change anything is me, uh, not my counselor, nobody else.
Yes.
So that was one factor. And the second factor was when she wrote down the list, I did it. I did everything that she put down in the list. And I think the only thing I did not know was that in the US education system,
Mhm.
in order to graduate and even build enough of a resume to be admitted into a higher ed institution, you need to have some sort what we call the extracurricular activities.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that. Right in our culture, it was all about like get good grade and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Uh, and I remember I must have impressed that counselor so much that she came to my family tiny living room. I call it the living room, but it was a one bedroom apartment, squeeze all seven of us in. Uh,
It's just a
and
little Vietnamese household, right? I mean, that's what we.
right, it's like it's totally cozy, right?
Yeah.
And she wanted my mom's signature so that I can attend a camp. I think it was just a weekend camp to become a natural helper. So I have sort of like a line of extracurricular activities in my resume. And my mother at the time, of course, as a girl, you don't sleep anywhere else but your own home. I think she must have sat in that living room forever because of differences in languages, and with a lot of flipping the old dictionary, English Vietnamese, we figured out she wanted the signature. And I think eventually my mom did give the signature. I did attend camp. And so I think those two combinations, the people who saw my determinations and believed that I could do it, and yes, and my stubbornness is get me to where I am.
Because I spoke to Senator Joe Nguyen actually recently, and we discussed how rare it is to see Asian Americans get involved with government. Because I know, as an educator, I know Politics 101 is not a course offered in pharmacy schools. So what was it that made you get involved and, to make history as Washington's first refugee legislator?
I think it's kids. I think there's multiple factors. I think first of all, I would just the idea of public service has always been instilled in me by my grandparents. Um, kind of live generously and be kind to others. I mean, even the term public service was not something in my top vocabularies. It just be kind and be generous and help out whenever. Um, all of that led me to serve as a scholarship chair for the local public school district that my children attend. It just happened to be the year of 2013, and as a scholarship chair, I wanted to write regret letter to all the applicants who did not get chosen as the scholarship recipient. Um, I read two essays of two graduate students at the time, identified themselves as undocumented students. 2013 was a year that at federal level, the DREAM Act died. Um, and these two young students reminded me of that 15 years old, who had a dream, who needed somebody who saw the potential and believed in them. And they also was that work was the reason that I get to see the system that did not create or made or sustained for people like me, or these two students who identify themselves as undocumented. So I decided that it's time for me to make that change for the next generations. I mean, in the end, it's really about losing talents. I saw these young people as my own children, future um, classmate, teammate. They are going to make their future a reality, and to take away an opportunity for them, similar to my own fight for my own growth and success. And so I ran as school board director for my school district. That was the beginning of learning and understanding policies and how it impacts people. When the opportunity opened, I was asked to run, and I turned them down because, I keep joking. I say I'm somebody who could not multitask. I focused on one thing and I worked on it. But it was my children who convinced me otherwise. They basically say, Mom, you share with us your stories about being a refugee, how it is that you overcame all these challenges. It's an opportunity for you to be at the bigger platform, make more significant change than just in education, because there's so much more than that. And they convinced me, and the rest is where it is now. I think the other piece is that I approach politics in a very non-politics way. I think I approach politics in a very scientific way, because that's how we are trained. We're trained thinking that way. Exactly.
I know as a democratic Vietnamese refugee, I would say that you are in a very unique and challenging position, considering how in past elections, the Republican Party has had a strong support from majority of the older and first generation Vietnamese Americans. And it's mainly because fighting communism is typically ranked as a top priority issue for them. And the Democratic Party has been perceived to be a little bit more sympathetic to communism than the Republican Party. So I'm curious to know, what do you say to those people who say that you have betrayed the Vietnamese people and forgot where you come from and forgot all the sacrifices of those who suffered from communism for us to be here? Because I think about this a lot, and I ask myself if it's even feasible for both of our generations to come to an agreement on any of these issues when some immigrant parents would say racial inequalities, Black Lives Matter is not a top priority compared to communism. So what do you say to that?
I think the term you use, Hui, is it Hui or is it Huang?
It's Hui Huang.
It's Hui Huang, so it's Huang then.
That's not Huang is my last name.
Oh, Huang is your last name.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay. um, the term that you're using is a term perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like right now, it passed the time. At the same time, it's not past the time. Right now is the beginning of the work, right? For me, at least in the Vietnamese community here in Seattle, a little bit different than Senator Joe Nguyen is that I have been involved with the Vietnamese community so much,
Mm-hmm.
and I get framed as a communist so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's really is the what you do speak louder than what you say. I think if we are anti-communist, and this is some of these uncles and aunts, they are adorable, and I do love them.
I love them too.
with all my heart, I do love them, and they know I love them, and that's a good start, right? Because we have that connection, and they often. I still remember in 2018 when I first ran for state representative, when I asked them to help contribute financially to my campaign, they jokingly say, "I'm gonna write you a check, but I wish you are a Republican. I would have double and triple my contribution." Right? And here's the thing. I think that my talking point has always been my dad was being jailed. Basically, that's what it is. Re-educational camp is just a nice name. My uncles was being jailed. My father-in-law's, who was not even in the army, he just happened to be the literate. In the literate population, he was also being jailed. The point is the policies of the government or the policy of the party. In this case, when we talk about communism, it's a party, and in theory, it's supposed to look out for poor people, working class people, and to give them a chance to survive, especially if they work hard. They should be able to survive. In reality, their policies was nothing but cruelty. Their policy was to divide those who stand with the party versus those who perceived a stand against the party. And a lot of their policies led to actions including separating families, would not give opportunities for talents to serve the countries. And that kind of policy perpetuate until now. Only only family members of the party leaders has opportunity for higher educations, whereas so many young talents in Vietnam currently could not get that opportunities. And if we compare and contrast with the Democrats currently, the Democrat policy currently is about us, not them. Is about making sure that people who need a second chance have a second chance. It's about compassion and kindness. It's not about us versus them. And I ask these uncles and aunts that they look at the policy themselves. And if that is the reason why we chose to leave our homeland, because we was not given opportunity, then we need to vote for the kind of policies that would give others opportunities. If we left our homeland because of a chance to live, a chance to work hard, then you vote for those who support the policy to give you that chance. So I told them, I say, it's, you know, if we stuck with the Democrats versus Republicans, and if we look at this, the party switch around Lincoln time, then it can be very confusing. And if you stuck with just simply Democrat versus Republican, we miss the entire point of what government is about.
I like what you mentioned because I'll be honest, this has been an issue for not just myself. Surprisingly, that a lot of young Asian Americans are a little bit more liberal, and a lot of my colleagues have kind of stayed silent on these issues because it's so hard to have this confrontational conversation with the older, you know, immigrant parents who have this mindset. So I appreciate you shining some light on that. I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about healthcare for a bit, specifically pharmacy. You know, during this pandemic, we've seen pharmacists being recognized across the country as essential workers, you know, being on the front line to help care for patients at a time of crisis. Because of COVID-19, we're seeing a dramatic increase in the number of people getting vaccinated during this flu season. Where many,
I hope so. I hope so. I'm glad to hear that.
We're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing high doses flu vaccines being wiped out at the pharmacies. So when this COVID vaccine does become available, I think about the added responsibilities that was going to fall onto the pharmacist's lap. And when pharmacists are already suffering from burnout, mainly because of the broken reimbursement model we have, there's been a lot of number of reports that say pharmacists are treated like fast food workers and they're not being reimbursed properly for the clinical services they provide. So you as a pharmacist, talk to me about how you think our profession is changing, for the better or for worse, and what advice would you give pharmacy students before they come out and practice as a pharmacist?
Yes, absolutely. That is actually one of my joy. I get to connect with the School of Pharmacy so much more
You should connect
after
with
getting
us.
elected.
I should bring you to Pacific.
It's like after elected, it was like, oh, okay. You know, I thought about it a lot as well, and I think well, my husband is a neurologist, and I think um, if I may speak to sort of a general bigger picture, that those of us who choose to go into healthcare, whether you're a pharmacist, a physician, a nurse, a therapist, it used to be because we want to care for people. We want to provide a kind of service that caring for them, specifically in their health. We just like many professions in society, think that politics and healthcare does not mix. And I think that we are mostly wrong. It mixed in the worst way, and I think for many of the pharmacy students and the current practicing pharmacists, um, it's very important, I think, for us to be familiar with term like policies or term like politics. I mean, to me, it's funny. One of my conversation with my own mom, um, you know, she was pretty distressed when I decided to run for office. Uh,
I didn't have mom support.
it's like, yeah, why you're a girl to start out with, and politics is like
Yeah.
only liars go into politics.
Oh,
You know how that goes.
no.
And I, I, I believe that politics is about policies, and policy is about setting rules and standards. In pharmacies, what we are proud of is really our standards of practice, right? We hold ourselves high. We have incredible set of ethics, and I think those are critical to understand that with those, none of these will stay if we don't fight for it. It didn't appear in thin air. Somebody at one point in time has fought for these, have established these standards. Some worked for them 100 years ago. Some still worked, but not all of them. And so it's up to us to modernize our practice. It's up to us to ask ourselves, what is the current 21st century, looking into 22nd century standards of pharmacies, and how do we change policies so that it impact these standards, so that it uphold our professions. And that is number one. And number two, I keep seeing medicine, healthcare as a collaborative, the most collaborative practice of all practices. I wanted to see those who are in that, in the professions of healthcare, work together. And I think we began to. We talk to each other a lot more. Instead of protecting our turf, we can learn from one another and help each other out as we see that a consistent change in practice. And last but not least, and I think this is critical for us to see, and thanks to my son, who is a freshman in college now, who shared with me some of his learning. And one of the piece of liberalism is the concept of creating wealth versus thinking that resources and wealth is finite. Therefore, we feel that we have to fight for it. I think that if we change our mindset and really see opportunity, for example, we just talked about pharmacists administer vaccine, right? When I graduated from pharmacy, that was like we were taught how to do it, but we were not allowed to do it because it was not right available for us at the time. These changes is important, and it's important because somebody fought for it. So I think we need to get involved. We need to stay updated, and it's perfectly okay not to know. It's perfectly okay to say, hey, we want this. And it's perfectly okay for somebody to say, oh, it's happening for you. Would you join us, right? And last but not least, know who your representatives are. I never knew who my representative was. until now that I realized the importance of that connection, the importance of conversations, and get involved. And you know, if you don't want to serve as a state representative in your own community, at least talk to them, at least help them do the job, help them understand what are the different trials, right? We have 3-phase trials, from a novel products all the way to a pharmaceutical products and post-market. I mean, a lot of politicians have no idea that's the process we go through. let alone community members. So that would be my 2 cents
Yeah.
as far as how we could improve our professions and change the face of our profession.
Yeah, because our pharmacy profession is changing so rapidly. So I always tell my students, get involved. Don't be afraid to speak up, because that's the only way that we're going to see change. So I know we're almost running out of time, but do you have a few minutes to play a short game with me?
Sure.
I'm gonna do this because I played this with Senator Joe, and I wanna play this game called Would You Rather. I'm gonna show you a few pictures, and you just choose. Okay? So, would you rather have a bowl of bún bò Huế, a spicy beef noodle soup, or would you rather have a bowl of bún riêu, a crab noodle soup?
This is the problem of being politicians and a scientist. It depends. If I'm in Vietnam,
Uh-huh.
if I'm in Vietnam, and if I'm in the southern part of Vietnam, it's definitely bún riêu. It's all about where you are and which locations, right? And what season. So in honor of the fall, I would choose bún bò Huế.
All right. I love it. It depends. All right. This is why you're in Congress, or that's why you're a state representative. Here's another one. Would you rather have chai ba mao, a three-color dessert, or would you rather have bánh gia lợn, a traditional Vietnamese cake?
Bánh gia lợn.
Yeah, you sounded confident in that one. There you go.
Oh, very confident because it's very southern, and I came from the Mekong Delta, so.
Okay. Here's the last one. Would you rather play Chan, a draw and discard popular card game that my grandparents always loved to play, or would you play Bao Cua and Tom Ca, a lucky game typically played in Lunar New Year's?
It's Bao Cua Tam Cá, simply because I know the rules.
Okay.
The chance for winning is way more than the other one.
Yeah, I can't play the first one. I just know how to deal it out. That's my role. Well, thank you so much. I'm aware that you're going up for re-election and that you are on the ballot for November 3rd. So for all the District 41 people that may be watching this and listening, what would you want them to know? And for everyone else, what would you like people to know about the importance of this upcoming election?
Well, I want them to know that I'm working pretty hard for system change. I am really excited about, at the very least, 3 legislations that I'm working on. One is to put an equity impact statement in parallel with every single fiscal note for all legislations. I believe that for so long, our system could only see the efficiency and efficacy of legislation through money, not through the impact of people's life. And so with this legislation, it forced legislators to examine policy based on the impact of people's life. And it is the equity impact statement. Second one is working family tax credits. The pandemic really showed us who are the people upholding the economy, really are the heroes among us. They are the working families, and they deserve to be supported. They are the hard workers, and if we believe in what we call American dreams, we need to support these people and making sure that if they work hard, they shouldn't face eviction, they shouldn't face homelessness, nor should they worry about food insecurity. And the last piece is that I'm working on police accountabilities, and it involves a lot of conversations and engagement and understanding, looking deeply into the racial equitable system in public safety. And in this case, we're looking to our police as somebody who would provide public safety, not somebody who would create chaos and disparity in that particular services that we all depend on. So those are the 3 of a few dozen legislations that I'm working on, but I'm proud of those, and I wanted to be re-elected so that I can continue those important work.
Representative My-Linh Thai, I know it's a busy time for you with elections, so thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Best of luck with your re-election, and I hope to meet you in person one day.
Likewise. Thank you, Huy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.